On April 1521, Ferdinand Magellan fell in battle against the natives on the small island of Mactan. His death ended the first circumnavigation of the globe, and his empire-building plans in the Pacific died with him. But what if he had lived? Would the Philippines have become the center of an expansive maritime empire? Let's find out. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I am your host, and this is the second episode in our series about alternate histories from the Pacific Islands. If you haven't seen it yet, then make sure to watch the first part, where we explored what would have happened if the Dutch had colonized Hawaii. This time, we are looking at the Philippines and the legendary Lapu-Lapu. Lapu-Lapu was the chieftain of a small tribe on the island of Mactan. When Ferdinand Magellan arrived, Magellan claimed the islands for the Spanish and tried to force the local population to convert to Christianity. When Lapu-Lapu refused, Magellan attacked and was killed during the battle, though historians debate whether or not he was actually present at the battle. It makes no difference for our story today, because Lapu-Lapu became the hero of the natives after the battle and is considered a national hero of the Philippines to this day. But let's change things up a bit and imagine that Lapu-Lapu died at the battle. Without their leader, the Filipinos would probably lose the battle. And while this alternate timeline starts with tragedy, it would ultimately lead to the rise of a mighty Filipino Empire that would expand across Asia. When Magellan landed on the shores of Mactan, he knew that he had found something special. He wasn't just referring to the beautiful beaches and lush vegetation, but the people that inhabited these lands. The locals were perfect candidates for conversion to Christianity and enslavement. The Spanish crown would love it. Magellan didn't really care about converting the natives himself, though. He cared more about claiming the land and finding gold. In fact, he only brought 18 men with him ashore, not expecting much resistance. And when they approached the village, the Filipinos put up little effort to hide their awe and submission. When Magellan demanded tribute and forced labor in return for letting them keep their heads, the Filipinos agreed without question. They offered him gifts and promised full compliance. But when Magellan decided to take one of the women with him as a slave, the Filipinos snapped. As soon as Magellan had walked away with his prize, the village threw rocks at the retreating Spaniards, forcing them back to their ships. Though Magellan was enraged, he knew better than to engage. With the entire village, he sailed away, vowing revenge. While he never forgot about the insult, the discovery of the Ladrones Islands and the riches on board the Chinese junk made him neglect his plans for revenge. On April, when Magellan finally returned to Mactan with a force of 40 men, none of the Filipinos expected the attack. They were taken completely by surprise. One of the men who got caught off guard was a young fisherman named Lapu-Lapu. He witnessed the carnage as the Spaniards ran through the village, killing everyone in sight. His parents and siblings were killed, and he barely managed to escape into the jungle himself. There he met up with some other survivors, and together they planned their revenge. Since Magellan had anchored his ships far away from shore, the Filipinos couldn't attack head-on. They had to use their knowledge of the waters around the island to lure the Spaniards further inland. Lapu-Lapu volunteered to lead the charge. With some of the strongest warriors at his side, he swam out to the ships and engaged the Spaniards in the water. The Filipinos had the advantage here, but it didn't last long. The battle quickly moved on to land, where the Filipinos lost their advantage in numbers. Outnumbered and outgunned, Lapu-Lapu and his warriors fought bravely, but there weren't enough of them. One by one, they fell to the steel and gunpowder of the Spaniards, until Lapu-Lapu was the last man standing. He fought on for a while, but eventually he was shot and killed by Magellan himself. The Filipinos retreated once more, hoping to regroup and try again another day. But Magellan had followed them, and he pursued them relentlessly until every last man was dead. Magellan was hailed as a hero when the survivors returned to Spain, and stories of his mighty deeds spread like wildfire. Across the islands he had conquered, however, there was barely anyone left to tell the tale. The Filipinos he had killed had been the strongest and most able-bodied men of the villages. Now those villages could offer little resistance. As the Spanish began to colonize the islands, the rest of the Filipinos slowly converted to Christianity, though a few groups deep in the mountains remained unconquered. These mountain tribes would be the ancestors of the Igorites, who even today live secluded in the mountains of northern Luzon. Now, as you know, the real Lapu-Lapu did die in this battle, and went on to rule the island of Mactan for many years. He also reportedly fought against the Spanish later on, but failed to stop their advance. As the decades passed, the Spanish gained control over most of the islands and converted most of the population to Christianity. Only a handful of tribes remained unconquered, but their resistance was futile. The Spanish were too strong, and the Filipinos too divided. Eventually, all traces of the pre-colonial Filipino culture disappeared, and the islands became a mere province of the Spanish colonial empire. But in our alternate timeline, things turned out very differently. The Filipinos rose up in a massive revolt that drove the Spaniards back into the sea. Entire fleets were sunk as the Filipinos used guerrilla tactics to decimate the Spanish navy. Finally, the Spanish king recognized that the Filipinos simply couldn't be subdued, and he granted them full autonomy. From this point on, the islands would be known as the Filipino Empire. With the threat of outside powers gone, Lapu-Lapu set about the task of uniting the islands under his rule. First, he reached out to the neighboring islands, offering them a chance to join his empire or face the consequences. Most rulers accepted his offer, seeing the power of his navy, but a few refused. Lapu-Lapu had no choice but to use force. Battles were fought, and entire fleets were sunk as the Philippine navy grew stronger and stronger. Lapu-Lapu was a brilliant tactician and his warriors eager to defend their homeland. Before long, the entire archipelago had submitted to his rule. From his capital on Mactan, Lapu-Lapu set about the task of expanding his empire. His empire would stretch from the southernmost tip of the Philippines all the way to the coast of China. He established trade relations with the Chinese, the Indians, and the Arabs, and his wealth grew tremendously. His empire would last for hundreds of years, with each ruler striving to be remembered as the greatest emperor of the Philippines. During this time, the once small and insignificant island group became the center of the Asian world. Its wealth and power attracted the attention of the entire world. European powers would send diplomats to his court, hoping to gain favor and maybe even an alliance. The Filipinos had proven that they could stand toe-to-toe with any naval power in the world. They were tough, skilled, and cunning, and European powers didn't want to risk angering them. The Philippine Empire would continue to thrive for centuries until the Europeans came back with even bigger and better navies. The Philippine emperors knew this was only a matter of time and prepared accordingly. They built a formidable navy and army, but it wasn't enough. As the years passed, the Europeans became more aggressive, and eventually they invaded the Philippines. Despite fierce resistance, the Philippine rulers were captured, and the empire fell apart. Those who resisted were brutally crushed, and the Philippines fell into chaos. It took years for the Philippines to recover, but it never regained its former glory. Instead, it fell under the control of the Dutch and then the British. It wouldn't be until the early 20th century that the Philippines would finally be free. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Now remember to subscribe so you won't miss the next episode in this series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.